We do need to give charity. No, it's the same. We're gonna give some else. We do give charity.
You know why we get charity?
I'm gonna end up knocking this thing over. I already know I'm gonna knock this thing over. So let's go ahead. See, I know.
Oh, that's okay. Hello. You don't have a dollar? Was the drive better?
Okay.
Okay.
Oh.
Yes.
No,
That's my son. He
Oh,
does
I
not
see.
care.
No, I
Is
don't
that
care.
okay? Do you-
Oh, my name isn't on the
Your
sheet.
name-
I'll
your
go
name, Taylor,
I'll go
Alex,
here.
forgot to bring some
I
things.
do not have.
No, Alex, you
I'll
sit
add-
there.
Yeah, you can bring another chair
Orlando,
too.
Of course we can.
Orlando, you have paper?
Johnny, here, scoot over next to me. We'll get you one more chair.
Yeah, that'd be good.
So why don't we let the people know online, the people who are here live.
He doesn't care.
Just give me a little story.
Alex, Alex,
Oh, thank you.
we'll get you some paper somehow, someday.
Well, you used the,
Whoa, 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 whoa.
that's exactly what you.
It's really funny because when the rabbi came in, he says people sit somewhere the first day and I think it's their seat. So it was really funny that you said, I don't care.
Why don't?
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, I know, but it's like people do, we get in our
Well, you know,
minds.
people get, they get possessive.
Yes, quickly.
Well,
There we
it's
go. How's that?
insecurity.
All
That's
right.
what I think it is.
That makes sense.
Because.
My
I
front
feel,
pocket. All right.
my territory.
I think it's more familiar.
You're probably right too.
Oh, do you have
We
another?
always light a candle to
one
remind
more
ourselves
syllabus
that
for
studying
us, if you don't mind?
is a sacred activity.
We got a few. Did anybody need a syllabus?
Oh, do you want, do you want one?
Right.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר קידשנו במצוותיו וציוונו לעסוק בדברי תורה לעסוק בדברי תורה לעסוק בדברי תורה לעסוק בדברי תורה לעסוק בדברי תורה. Okay. Make sure you give charity. That does not go to the temple. That goes to other purposes. We'll find other people who give charity. Okay. And what we're going to do each week, actually, at the end of the class, is one person take the money from the charity box, give it to whatever charity you want, whether it's a person, a homeless person, whether it's an animal shelter, or just give it to a cause, whatever. But it doesn't go to the temple. Okay. The whole idea is that we give tzedakah, and the temple should give tzedakah. If you want to make donations to the temple, you do it online with your checks. This is done that we are giving personally to give to charity. Okay, so I think that's important. Let's go over a couple things first. So this is a handout that has a number of the commonly said blessings, the most commonly said blessings. It has it in Hebrew, it has it in transliteration, and it has it in English. Okay, and
I passed mine around.
Yeah, I like
Thank
to.
and
No,
it's,
I mean, the blessings is for
I
you.
know.
Very important.
And this is handout, the same as last week or different?
no, it's still handout. Still handout.
Different. Okay.
So this has all of the, not all, but many of the most common blessings. It has this, which I am trying to find a placard to put here. This is the Yotzer prayer. This is the prayer upon going to the bathroom. From transliteration, translation, and English. The prayer we say most often, hopefully. Okay?
Okay.
I live that way. And then some notes about teaching service, which we were talking about Saturday morning at Shabbat. And some blessings over our children, which is so important on Shabbat. And then there's some prayers, and we'll learn this is going on. There's some prayers you need a minyan, a group of 10 or more, to be able to say. One of those is the Kaddish. What do you do when there's not 10 people? Okay? See, that's my question. It's not been answered. So, first of all, when you count for a Kaddish, you never go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's a custom because you don't want the Ein Hara, the evil eye, to go on the 10th person to break it. So you go not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5. Or you go Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, Zayin, Tet, Tet. Okay? But sometimes you don't have 10. You
Or
want to
do
say
you
Kaddish.
count women as 1 and 2 and 3?
That's up to the community. We do, over the age of 13.
Women can say Kaddish?
Yes. Women can always say Kaddish.
I didn't know that.
Absolutely. The question is whether they can be counted in a minyan. That's the question. The question is not whether they can say Kaddish. First of all, Kaddish is in Aramaic. It's not even in Hebrew. Right? And they absolutely can say Kaddish. Anyone can say Kaddish. When my mother-in-law died, my children said Kaddish.
Mm.
They chose they want to say Kaddish every night for a year. And they couldn't say that. But, so absolutely, the question is, do they count as part of the minyan? And so the conservative movement a number of years ago came up with this substitute reading for the mourner's Kaddish if the minyan is not present. And it's based on the Kaddish, and there's some phrases in it, like instead of saying Yehei Shmei Rav Amavrak, it says Amen Yehei Shmei Rav, a little bit different. It says V'hit Gadalti, V'hit Kadashti. Okay, so it's a little bit different than normal Kaddish, but it's in case you don't have 10 people. The reason that you need 10 is a very important number to use when we get to it later on. But 10 is, there are 10 Sefirot energy centers, there are 10 commandments. God speaks 10 times in creation of the world. And most importantly for our purposes, in terms of why a minyan, is we're going to study later on, a couple of weeks, the Torah portion, where they send the spies in. They've gotten out of Egypt. Okay, the Hebrews have gotten out of Egypt across the sea. They're about to, forgive me, keep my phone on just in case there's an emergency. They're about to go into land of Israel, and they send 12 spies out. And the 12 spies go out to see what's like in Israel. They come back, and 2 of them, Caleb and Joshua, say, there's a lot of challenges there, but we're going to do great. 10 of them say, oh no, the people are like giants, they'll crush us. Now, this is the generation that saw the miracle at Sinai and the miracle of the Sea of Reeds and the miracle of the 10 plagues. But the idea, those 10 people convince the entire community to change their mindset. And the idea is if you give me 10 people that are committed to anything, you can change the world. So there really are 10. Is that this is why we have a minyan. The other reason you need to have a minyan for certain prayers is because the prayers, if you really understand them, are so intense that our neshama, our soul, leaves our body. They're really allowed to. And without 10, your neshama, God forbid, might decide to stay out of your body, not be in the physical world of Asiya.
Oh.
That's how powerful.
Again.
So that some of these prayers are so powerful, the ones that we need a minyan for, the Borchu, Kaddish, that if you don't have 10 people, is if you really let the prayers, and that's what we're talking about Saturday morning service. We have a teaching service Saturday morning about why you do what you do. And if you really get to the place where the prayers take you, it's like taking a psychotropic or a hallucinogen. It takes you out of your body. And the idea is without 10 people, you may not be grounded enough to come into your body. Come back home. See anything wrong? I'm never going to get to this schedule. That's just great.
What was the explanation before about the...
עשרת המרגלים, שהמזל המרגלים שיכולים לשנות את הדעה של כל העולם. So you need 10 אנשים יכולים לעשות שינוי בכל העולם, וזה המדינה.
10 people, really?
10
people can change the world.
Can I say one thing?
How?
10 people committed. One corresponds to each of the spheroids in the cosmic great world. One, if you have 10 people, you have all the possibilities covered. You have an entire sphere, a 2-dimensional 8-direction circle with a spot on top and above. You've created a globe. You've created a paint sphere. You can have 10 people. We'll get more into this later on, but 10 people. The 10 spies come back, and they make all of us wait for 40 years.
Yeah.
Right? They make us wait for 40 years. We have to travel through the desert for 40 years. When we get to it over here, we'll get to the Torah portion.
Okay, but 10 people in the same physical location or in
10 people committed to anything can do anything.
So as a group.
The question is.
Yes, I'm never gonna.
Okay, no,
Yes.
I always thought it was
Okay, so-
Sodom, where it says if I find, what if I?
That's going to be part of it as well. That's the Sitacha. That's on the dark side. 10 people in any way
And it right there.
Can we hold that one?
Don't hold your tongue. No, holding your tongue is Lashon Hara. Lashon Tov is not holding your tongue, it's speaking.
No, but you got so many questions about
That's
you
okay.
still bringing up. We're going to-
That's how we should do so. It takes how long? I don't care. I'm on no agenda. So the Kaddish is very powerful. And so this is a prayer that was created by the conservative movement a number of years ago, so that you could say Kaddish if you didn't have 10 people.
Why does the adding those little endings change what you're saying? Like when you say, instead of saying, I've lost the words now, but instead of saying this, you say that. How does?
Instead of saying Yit Gadal,
Yeah, you say Yit Gadali.
no, instead of what I pray with this prayer. Instead of saying Yit Gadal, this prayer has you saying Yit Gadalti. Okay,
So it's about me, so T is I.
as opposed to Yit Gadalti, I did this to myself, as opposed, I made myself large, as opposed to Yit Gadal, it made itself.
Now I get it.
All right. Do I have to teach you guys Hebrew grammar too?
Them too.
I just want to.
Didn't you teach Hebrew grammar?
I just want to, Rabbi, I just want to remind you that she has no background, so if you take Kaddish, give her another word just to put.
I won't get that. When I get to Kaddish, I will. I haven't gotten there.
And I'm new immigrant, I'm only 30 something years old. You're talking too fast. And now we can just go.
No. You're listening too slowly. Actually, that was a quote. Do you know where that quote came from? It was Larry Elder's quote.
You know to digest it, you know to do.
I will go slow. You can always just stop me.
I just-
And you can throw things at me too.
I love.
I ask that you throw things gently, that's all. Okay, let's go on. So remember last week, we talked about the 4-letter name, we talked about Hineni, I am present, we talked about the Tanakh being the Torah, the 5 books, Nevi'im, the prophets, the Ketuvim, the writings. We talked about that if you take the 4-letter name of God and you make it vertical, you get this image like a human being.
Yeah.
We talked about action versus faith, we talked about the portable homeland, and we talked about Aleph, how Aleph, this place of silence, also corresponds to God's name. Remember that? Because Aleph is not just Aleph, it's also composed of 2 Yuds and a Vav, which gave the same numerical value of 26, which is the same as the value of God's name. How many of you guys remember that?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Orlando, can people ask questions on YouTube? I just am not really sure.
Yeah, if they are
Okay. All right. If someone starts trolling us again, then just cut them off.
I know.
Apparently we had someone trolling us with pornography or something in service.
yes.
Really?
Okay. All right. We talked about Adam and Eve and the serpent, right? Ha-Adam, the human being split into Adam and Eve. The idea that Eve did not come from Adam's rib. They both came from Ha-Adam, the human being, right? We talked about the nature of Israel. I'm sorry, the nature of evil. Now, let's go to, if you have one, let's go to, we have another Tanakh right here? We do, don't we?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Sorry, I
Well, that is the Tanakh, right? Or is it still packed away? Or is it
Yeah,
still
no,
packed
we
away?
have
There's
it.
one
there
right
any-
by the door, I think.
There's prayers, but I don't know. We haven't unpacked and we haven't set up our book. See, B'ezrat Hashem, you're gonna walk in here one night soon, and this is all gonna be bookcases, filled with books. But they're out of the bookcases at IKEA. And
Been there, done that.
no, they're out of those bookcases, which are like a quarter the price of any other bookcase. So we have hundreds of books that will come here, much of them from my library. All sorts of stuff. Okay. So let's go to chapter 11 of the book of Bereshit, the book of Genesis. Okay? Actually, let's do something before. I don't know why you skip this, but let's go to chapter 6, verse, oh, I got my glasses. Verse 9. Okay?
I'm gonna give them in there.
All right. So maybe you guys can share, the 3 of you can share one Tanakh. And maybe Alex, if they can borrow one, the 3 of them can share one. And the 3 of you can share one. Is that okay? Will you bring them closer to John? Is that okay?
This
one, I can share- yeah.
Yes, the 3 of
Are you
guys.
John too?
No, he's Alex.
Okay, hi Alex.
Okay. All right. All right. So
I won't be able to see it.
from Adam, we're going to go to Parsha Noah. Shesh Tesha. So we're going to go from, so we have Adam, and 10 generations later we have Noah. Okay, Noah. Noah's name, Hebrew goes from right to left.
Well, we've got Isaiah and all this stuff mixed in.
3, 4, 11.
Good
Maybe
point.
there's
Okay.
enough like this.
No, this is an only English one. Okay, this is an only.
Here.
This is an only English one.
Why
Okay.
don't you trade with
But he
us?
said
We have
sheesh,
one
kesh,
with
kesh.
both.
Okay.
Trade
Which
with
one
us.
is better for you? She
These
needs-
guys, well, these three know how to dominate anything.
I read.
All right.
Yeah.
Orlando, what point did I lose control?
Thank you, guys.
Okay, all right. 10 generations from Adam. Oh, wait, open this up. 10 generations from Adam. So 10 generations from Adam, and I take my choice. All right, I say it like this 9 times. 10 generations from Adam, we have Noah. The world has become corrupt. The word Noah actually means to rest from Nath. Type of shva. Nath is the resting shva. And it says, someone please read 6:9. Just that first line, please. Chapter 6, verse 9 of Bereshit.
By the 10th generation.
These are the offspring of Noah.
Oh, this is the line of
6,
Noah.
9.
Noah
Okay.
was a righteous man. He was.
There we go.
blameless.
Loudly.
This is the line of Noah. Noah was a righteous man. He was blameless in his age. Noah walked with God. Noah-
Okay, so we're gonna stop that. So here's the commentary that Noah was perfect in his generation. Okay, so Noah, we got to kind of stay together, otherwise we can't hear it, and whoever's watching it here. So Noah was perfect in his generation, and what does it say again? He walked.
With God.
No, I want to, no, I want to check something that I've noticed for the first time and I have a question, but then I wait.
What's the question?
No.
What's the question? It's okay. Otherwise, someone else may have the question.
Why does it has, there is no one letter in the Torah that is without a reason. So
Right.
why does it say twice, Ele toldot Noach, Noach ish tzedek? Why does it repeat itself like, rather than say Ele toldot
Because
Noach
it's
ish tzedek?
Ele Todot Noah.
No, I know.
נוח היא צדיק, זה
Here,
בסדר.
Noah.
I heard some explanation about this.
This is, I look at this as, I'm sure there are many explanations, but this is, when we say that, it generally means like Kadosh Kedushin, that holy of holies, you shall surely rebuke. But yeah, so Noah, but the general interpretation is just,
Yeah, it's like just.
Two sentences.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
okay, it was right. Noah was, these are the generations of Noah. Noah was a righteous man. Now look at what it says. He walked with God, correct?
Yeah.
We all know the story of Noah, right? We all know the story of Noah?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Noah, he built him an arky, Noah, he built him an arky, made it out of hickory, barky. See? You guys didn't grow up in America.
Wow, this is so
We can
nice.
teach you after.
Yeah.
Hippopotami and kangaroosies, children.
Insects.
They made a good one.
A lot of movies, okay, they made a recent one. No word. Okay, so, all right, let's come back together. I can't see if I start doing it. You guys start. All right, so let's go. Here's what happens. Noah, it's 10 generations from Noah to Avraham, right? And to Abram, actually. And if we go to chapter 11, it goes generation by generation by generation. We go to chapter 11, verse 26. It talks about Terah. And Terah begot Abram, Nahor. Okay. So, who is Terah?
The father of Abraham, no?
No,
No.
the father of Abram. Okay, so, all right. We're never going to get
Who
into
is the grandfather?
this. This is going to go until 2029. And then we'll get to Exodus. Okay, so, Alan, so. Dress them up. Just can't take it. Okay, so.
Yeah.
All right, so what happens? We have Adam, right? And then 10 generations to Noah. Okay? And then we have 9 more generations to Terah. And then Terah's son, Abram is his name, not Avraham. That will happen. So Terah is an idol maker. He makes a living making idols. And there are all sorts of stories about the young Abram, who was a troublemaker. I like it. So Abram, okay. So Abram goes and he realizes one day, oh, the sun is so powerful. God must be the Shemesh. God must be the sun. And then the clouds come across and pass over the sun. He says, oh, the clouds are more powerful. God must be the clouds. And the clouds are blown away by the nighttime. And the wind, the night wind. He says, the night must be the most powerful thing. It's flying over the clouds. And then the stars come out. Oh, the stars must be the most powerful thing. They took care of the night. Then comes the moon. So, oh, the moon's the most powerful thing. And then comes dawn and the sun. So he realizes it's all one God. Now, this is very important in Judaism. We are not monotheistic. That is a misnomer. We are not monotheists. Okay? Monotheism means you believe there is one God that you worship that is separate. We are monists. Okay? Monism means everything is part of one God, and one God is part of everything.
How do you spell it?
M-O-N-I-S-M. So the idea is, it's the story that I said. The little boy says, the college kids say to the little boy, we'll give you $1 if you can tell me where God is. He says, I'll give you $10 if you can tell me where God isn't. Right? So in Judaism, we're much more like the traditional indigenous peoples who see God everywhere and in everything. Abram realizes this. Abram wants to teach his family that he loves so much, he wants to teach them about this. So one day, Terach, this is all from Midrash. One day, Terach walks into his idol shop. All the idols have been broken, except one big idol that's got an axe in its hand. Terach says, Abram, what did you do breaking the idol? He says, Dad, I didn't break it. They came with an offering. Some people came with an offering. All the idols fought over it, and the big guy won. And Terach says, that's ridiculous. These are stone. And Avraham says, let your ears hear what your mouth says. Right? So important how ridiculous it is. So Abram is what we call first Jew. And let's look at the very, very first time we hear about Abram. Would someone please read chapter 12, verse 1? Doesn't matter who. Chapter 12, verse 1. In English. 12:1. Anyway. You'll say partial left. All right, 12:1.
I'll do it. 12. The Lord said to Abram, go forth from your native land and from your father's house to the land that I will show you.
Okay, we're going to stop it right there. How many of you read Hebrew? Okay. Those of you who read Hebrew, do you also read script or only printing?
We read all.
I know the two of you do.
Oh, it's been a long time since I've read the script, but I can.
I'll try and do printing. My printing is
No, it's
even
all right.
worse.
I don't mind
All right.
script. I'll get into it.
This is an entire, I want you to retranslate what it says here. Because what it says here, okay? Remember Avraham, lech lecha. Right. Lech, we don't do this. We know that it's now in the 10th generation. So we went from the beauty of Adam down to Noah. Remember, what did Noah do? He walked with God, right? So we have this line, I'll do it actually. Lech lecha. So every verb in Hebrew, there's a conjugation of it that is command of it. So the word yoshev means to sit. But if I want to make you sit, I go, shev! It's command version. That's just shev. Holech means to go. Lech is the command version of go. Okay? It's good when I have Israelis here, because then they can verify my grammar, except half the time they don't remember the grammar. So lech means go. Lecha. Lecha, depending on how it's used, can mean for yourself. It can mean to yourself, right? It can even sometimes mean with yourself or by yourself. Right? Lechacha. Now it says, please read the next line. You can read it in the Hebrew. After Avraham, one word at a time. Avram lechacha.
מארצך
Wait, one word at a time. Artzacha, from
your country, your land.
your land. Not your country, from your land.
Eretz is a country.
Yes, but it's the land of Israel. Eretz literally means land, right? Go on.
וממולדתך, the place you born.
From the place, hold on. Of your birth.
ומבית
Hold on. And you also could translate it from the place of your child.
Yeah.
Okay? Hold on. You can say, yes, you can say from your child.
Okay.
But it also can
fine.
show, based upon the idea of yelling, you can also, it's not just birth, you can also do it based upon the idea of place of your childhood as well. Yeah, but still the place you're born, right?
Yes.
Go on,
ומבית אביך,
which means from the house,
Of your father.
your father home, your father house.
from the house of your father.
That's all related.
And because it could also, in theory, be ancestor, not just father,
Right.
right? Go on,
אל הארץ אשר אראך.
wait,
I'll show you where, it doesn't tell you.
no, it doesn't say. El, one word at a time, please, go on, slowly.
אל
El,
הארץ
to the land,
אשר אראך.
hold on, that
I'll show you.
I will show you. Or that you could also say that I will lead you to perceive. I will get you to perceive. I will show you. Okay?
English is translated. Interesting to listen to it in English.
Well, this is the point because
Yeah, yes, okay.
you don't.
I'm waiting.
Okay. Now, so let's see what the first words that in the Torah are recorded of what God says to Abram. Hey, you, go. To yourself, for yourself, by yourself, with yourself. Away from your land, away from the place of your birth, away from the house of your fathers, of your ancestor, to a land that I will show you, because of that was right? The first command God says to Abram is go meditate. Is this not the definition of meditation? Where you go away from that which you know to allow yourself to perceive that which God will show you. This is his point of view. I mean, don't worry about it. I was translating over here. This is his point of view. Nachon? This is right? Isn't this what meditation is? You.
Well, it's interesting because it doesn't say, I mean, I always wondered why lecha wasn't just duplicative of lech, but now I get kind of hear what you're saying. It's not intended to be duplicative. Because you don't have to say walk yourself. It's walk, right? I mean, it's in the first word unless the second
Go
one.
on, Alex.
In other words, Hebrew was a lot more complex than I was introduced to as Hebrew. A much more
Hebrew is
complex
much
language.
more subtle
Yeah.
when it comes to terms of emotions and spirituality. It's much more detailed.
Yeah.
English is much more technical.
Right.
It's like, you hear about the fact that there's 70 words for snow in the
Yeah.
Inuit language or whatever, right? Or whatever.
Yeah, right.
Hebrew is more of a psycho-spiritual emotional language. So there's subtleties in it. And there's also a lot of double entendres.
Everyone?
Double meanings.
Double meanings.
Okay.
A lot of double meanings. Same word means two things.
Yeah.
Okay. And both meanings are true.
Yeah.
So the very first thing God says to the very first Jew, go meditate.
Which can be interpreted.
Go receive.
Yeah.
Go to where I will show you. When someone talks about Kabbalah, the root from lekabel, to receive, this is where it comes from. You're not going to where you want to go. You're going away from everything you know that you may receive what God chooses to show you. You're not grasping, you're receiving. You're not taking, you're like about you're receiving. Go on.
So why does he have to say, if that's one interpretation, why does he have to say, unless he means it in your mind, you elevate to such a higher level that you disconnect from the place of your birth, of your father, like from the physical place, and
All right, how many of us have families that we
Elevate.
periodically see? I'm gonna ask you, how many of us have families that we see for holidays and not much else? Okay, or people, there's group families that, or people we've known since we were kids.
Yeah.
Okay? My uncle, God bless him, I love him dearly. Very, very dearly. And he loves me very, very dearly. Jack is, I think, 97.
Huh.
He's my father's younger brother. And you know what? When I go see Jack, I'm still a kid, all right?
Uh-huh.
Right? I'm still a kid. We get into these, we get in a circle. Robert Bly, I said this last week, so forgive me because I remember what I said. So Robert Bly, the mytho-poet from the University of Minnesota many years ago, Robert Bly used to say that people get around a family dinner of Thanksgiving, and it's like a toilet bowl. Everyone goes back to the places they've always sat in. Okay? They all go back. Suddenly, you're the black sheep, and you're the good guy, and you're the tough guy, and you're the one who's always the troublemaker, and you're the right.
Uh-huh.
And everyone falls into their little pointed rounds. Sound familiar?
Boy.
Doesn't it? So Bly used to say that when you see that happening, and everyone's starting to flush down the toilet, you should suddenly jump up and go, ah! Just to mess with everybody and shock them out of it. But that's really what, when you stay away from your house, from your father's place, from the place you know, we fall into patterns, don't we?
But it's safe.
That's what we're used to. Everyone's used. That's why at this is taught in most rabbinic schools, in their first year rabbinic class, baby namings, bar mitzvahs, weddings, and funerals, every family dysfunction comes out.
Oh boy.
Okay, because the roles are changing. The roles are changing. My little boy is becoming a man.
Yeah.
My little girl is no longer, is the little girl going to be daddy's little girl? She's now going to be husband's wife.
Right.
Right? So that's what all these kind of statements, it's about, does that help? It's take away from everything you know that's holding you back and just receive what God chooses to show us. So we now have established that we are monistic and we are meditative. By definition, Judaism is a meditative theology. Because the first thing that God says to Abram, is go meditate. Because this is, if you had to define meditation in one simple line, this is pretty much it, isn't it? Whether it is hitbodedut or hitlahabut. Either type, it's, wait, she's getting a headache from this. I'm making her, oh, okay.
No.
So can I ask?
Yes, go ahead. I thought it was like overwhelming.
No,
Okay.
no.
So, but this is also prayer, right? On some level, right? I mean, and yet we pray in a minyan, which is not by yourself. So is there a,
So, no, we said meditation.
right,
Group
so,
meditation is very powerful. Very, very powerful.
so is that like, is this like prayer or is this different?
This is just an instruction to him as an individual. We're going to get to instructions to the community.
Okay.
But this is the instruction to him as the very first one. The very first, this is really important to realize, the very first words said to the very first Jew are go meditate. This is why Rabbi Nachman, the great mystic of the Breslov Hasidim, would say that before you even say your morning blessings, you were to go out into the field and listen to the sound of the grasses and the plants.
Hmm.
Before you even say your morning blessings, you say Modani, which is the blessing. God bless you.
Bless you.
But you go out and you can. So this is an important piece about Abram. Is that everyone following this so far? Now we're going to see stories recapitulated. That's why we're spending so much time on these early stories, because it's important to learn the foundation so that when we see the repetitions, it's easy. So there's this guy, Abram, and then it says he's got this wife, and her name is Sarai. Sarai. There's no hey yet. Okay? And it's, if we go on right here, though, it will talk about how Abram gets married. Okay? And it will talk about him marrying Sarai. And it will talk about them going to Egypt, all these different things. Okay? And there's a line here, I'd have to find it, but I don't want to spend the time to teach this or something else. Where God says to Abram, I'm just going to look it up here because it'll be faster. God says to Abram, hold on, just because it's just going to be faster here than what I would. 17:1. So if we go to 17:1, here it says, Abram was 99 years old. God will say to him, walk before me and be perfect. Can I borrow you for a moment? So what did God say to Noah? What does it say? It said, Noah walked
With God.
with God. So you're going to be, I'll let you be God, I'll be Noah. Okay? But I'm walking with God. Doesn't take a lot of faith, does it? Right? I know what God is. We're going to walk this way. So I'm now walking before God. This has more faith, doesn't it? I have to have faith that when I fall back, God's going to catch me. Right? Thank you. So this is one of the differences between Noah and Abram. Okay, let's go back just a little bit. So God has promised that, multiple times up to this point, that he's going to give Israel to the offspring of Abram. Promise right here. And in chapter 16, we still have this issue. I'm going to erase, can I erase this right now? Is that okay?
Yeah.
We have this issue that he's getting to be an old man, and they still don't have any kids. Now, God has made the promise that he will have descendants, but it hasn't happened yet. Someone please read 16:1. Someone who's not.
Sarah, Abram's wife, had borne him no children. She had an Egyptian maidservant whose name was Hagar. And Sarai said to Abram, look, the Lord has kept me from bearing. Consort with my maid, perhaps I shall have a son through her.
Go on.
And Abram heeded Sarai's request. So Sarai, Abram's wife, took her maid, Hagar the Egyptian, after Abram had dwelt in the land of Canaan for 10 years, and gave her to her husband Abram as concubine.
Okay, first of all, now most of us know this story from Rosh Hashanah, right?
Yeah.
That Avraham, his name will become Avraham, almost sacrifices Isaac, right? And that there's this other handmaiden named Hagar, and Sarah wants Hagar and her son Ishmael thrown out, right? We've all heard this, right? And isn't this horrible? Whose idea is it that Abram should have bada bing, bada boom with Hagar?
Sarah.
What a nice woman. What a
Sarah.
nice wife.
And what a foolish husband.
Nothing to her.
He listened to her.
Well, Hagar was kind of
But how
enough
can
for him.
someone at this level?
Oh, isn't it great? They're such great leaders and they're also screw-ups. Isn't that great? Look, here's one of my biggest challenges with Catholicism.
Perfect.
Jesus is perfect.
Yeah.
I do not relate to the perfect character. Now, every one of our leaders, they got problems. Abram, Sarah, Isaac, this is the ultimate family dysfunction, isn't it?
Those two.
Moses. Okay, keeps going. David,
Yeah.
Solomon.
Wow,
This
Oh, but isn't that beautiful?
it makes people alive.
They're real
The
people.
real people.
They're real people
Will
who
pro-
do great holy things. I'm not interested in the perfect human being because
It's almost like Shakespeare wrote these stories. I don't mean it that way.
Shakespeare took them from me.
Yeah.
All right, so what happens? Abram and Hagar go bada bing, bada boom, and here comes Ishmael. By the way, from Ishmael, ultimately, will come all of Islam
Our cousin.
and the Arabs. Okay?
Mhm.
Okay, Muhammad.
The middle thing, we call them cousins.
Our biggest.
They're our Jewish cousins.
Our cousins.
Yeah,
Yeah.
middle thing. They're our cousins.
Our cousins. Okay, now, what happens over here?
Definitely
By the way, they come back together to bear out.
Definitely a
They do
dysfunctional.
Ishmael. Okay. Abram and Sarai, what happens? Let's go look. Okay. Would someone please turn to page 17:1 and read?
When Abram was 199.
Abram was 99 years old now.
When Abram was
We
99.
have a technical term for that, by the way. AK, altacopter.
When Abram was 99 years old, the Lord appeared to Abram and said to him, I am El Shaddai. Walk in my ways and be blameless. I will establish my covenant between me and you, and I will make you exceedingly numerous.
Stop. The word for covenant is brit. We have heard it before. God makes a covenant with Noah. And the covenant is, I'm going to make a covenant with you that I will never destroy the world by water again. And here's the sign of my covenant. Because a covenant is both parties have made an agreement and there's a sign. And what is the sign of the covenant? He'll never destroy the world by water again?
Rainbow.
Rainbow.
Exactly.
Oh, really?
That's the rainbow.
It says back here
Okay,
earlier.
that's what it says in the question. Okay, now we've got another covenant. Here's the second time that it's used, okay? Here's the second time. The second time it's used is this covenant. This is called the Brit Milah, the covenant of the foreskin.
So what's the covenant of the foreskin?
Circumcision.
Brit.
No.
Brit.
For
The Brit of the first one. So the covenant is you're giving your foreskin. So let's keep reading on, then we're going to talk about what.
when you cut the.
Snip. And every man goes like this, yes.
Everybody goes like this.
If you notice that, if you go to a bris, it doesn't matter if the bris is going on there and the guy's over here. When the moil goes snip, every guy kind of. Have you ever noticed that? Every guy automatically turns. It's very funny to watch. Okay, please continue reading. So he says he's going to give him covenant. Go ahead. Please continue, John.
And numerous. Abram threw himself on his face, and God spoke to him further. As for me, this is my covenant with you. You shall be the father of a multitude of nations, and you shall no longer be called Abram. Your name shall be Abraham.
Aha. So why hey? Why is it become Avraham? Because the hey, remember God's name is Yud Hey Vav Hey, is now going to go in the name. So now his name is Avraham. Her name becomes Sarah. The hey goes into her name as well. And they make this covenant. And the basic deal is, you give me your foreskin, I'm going to make you a people forever. Okay?
Why?
That's a good question. Why do we do a Brit Milah?
But before you answer, can you repeat the last sentence? You said
Why do we-
the deal that you.
The deal
I
is,
make you-
God saying, here's the sign of our covenant. You're going to do the Brit, the circumcision, and I'm going to make you forever your offspring will live.
Okay.
Okay, with it? Why do we do the Brit? If God is perfect, and it's actually talked about in next week's portion. 2 weeks portion. No, next week's portion. Next week's portion. If God is perfect, if a baby is perfect, why are we circumcising? That's a legitimate question, isn't it? And let's take off the table the idea because God says so, because that's a pretty horrible reason. Right? And there are a couple of reasons. First of all, it is a commitment from the parents. So your baby is perfect. Who's had a baby?
Yeah, I would definitely. I had
Now, when your baby was a baby, did you let him do whatever he wanted, or did you say, no, you can't put your hand and the fork into the electrical outlet? Right? When your babies were babies, right? When your babies were babies, didn't you tell them you can do this, but you can't do this? Did you not guide it? I know you because they still are. So, did you not guide them? And to be better? Okay. So they come perfect, but parents are in partnership with God to make that perfection even better. Right?
Mhm.
When you do a brit, you're saying, yeah, God, I'm not an absent father. I am part of this. I will not be an absent father. The obligation, by the way, from the Greeks is on the father, not on the mother. Just like the obligation to have children is on men, not on women.
Really?
Yeah.
Men must have children. Halachically, women are not obligated. So, it makes a lot of sense. We're not at risk. We don't put our lives at risk of getting pregnant. We're not trying to pass a watermelon through the eye of the needle. Right? So, we don't, it's okay. Because when you get pregnant, when you have the baby, chemicals released in your brain chemistry, so you don't remember the pain of it all.
Oh my God. I know,
All right,
guys.
here's your side story, because I go off on tangents too. So we had twins.
Oh.
Allison gained over 100 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah, size 2.
She gained 100 pounds in
She
a.
gained over 100 pounds in pregnancy. You understand, my wife is a size, she was a 0 or 2, she's 2 to 4. Okay. When she was pregnant, when getting close to the time, she could put her back against my chest. I could not get my arms around her.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
She couldn't, I had to buy her sweats because my sweats were too tight on her.
Oh my gosh. Oh my
Over
God.
100 pounds she gained.
That's what we heard.
No, that's not normal.
It's okay. Breastfeeding makes you lose it all, especially on twins. Twins, you're like nothing but burning calories all day.
Yeah.
Okay. So now understand she was on bed rest for 10 weeks.
Oh.
She was on bed rest for 10 weeks. And I cooked 5 meals a day. Now I will tell you, I cooked 5 different meals every day.
Maybe you were the problem.
No. I will tell you that I watched and binge watched with her the entire series of Sex and the City. I know more about women's shoes than any straight man should know. Okay? Twice. So we watched.
Twice.
Twice we watched. Christian Louboutin. Jimmy Choo, huh? I know.
Yeah.
Right, so the little red on side with a little, yeah, see, everyone, you know this stuff, huh?
Back now.
Yeah, so, thank you, I've had, so
Yes,
the
you have.
point.
It's much better.
So I had 5 meals, I cooked her 5 different meals every day. Now, when a woman gives birth, there are certain endorphins and certain chemicals released in her brain that apparently make her forget certain things, so that she will have children again. Because if you remember what it was like, why would you ever have a child again, right?
Yeah. Makes sense.
If you ask Allison, she will swear to you up and down, I cooked her 5 meals of French toast every day, and that's why she gained 100 pounds. I want you to know that was not the case.
I don't know. I kind of made.
No. First of all, even breakfast was different. I made little Mickey Mouse pancakes with M&Ms. I did, no. I was making food 5 times a day, different meals for her. As far as she's concerned, all she remembers is French toast. So when you give birth, so it's not a risk for us men. For you women, think about when you gave it, right? Why would you do it again? So it's a risk. So the commitment is actually upon the man, not the woman. All right, so let's go back to the story here. So they have this circumcision, okay? Or they're commanded to circumcise. And let's look what happens. Go to chapter 17, verse 23. Would someone please read? Oh, wait, the other reason that we do it, besides being in partnership. Our sexual energy is purely, it's the animalistic, the physical part, right? By removing the foreskin, we are making it not about lust, but about love. Bring the spirituality to sexuality. That's a piece of, okay? So that our children, that they decide that the sex is not going to be lust, whatever I want to take, I'm going to take like an ox or a lion, but rather it is about love. So sexuality ideally becomes a spiritual experience. Make sense?
Yeah.
Which is what it always is when love, which is why the term in Hebrew to make love to someone in the Bible is lada'at, which means to know. Because when you really make love to someone, is when you know them and they know you.
Huh.
It's also what Adam did,
It's but in lada'at.
Yeah.
It's very different when we get to the book of Vayikra, where it's about the idea of book of Leviticus, where the prohibition does not say to know, it says lie. To know is to make love. Make love is to know. All right, so that's what we have in Greek. Now, please read 17:23.
This one, then Abraham took his son Ishmael and all those servants born in his household and all those he had purchased for money, all the male members of Abraham's house, and he circumcised the flesh of their
Foreskin.
foreskin on that very day as God had spoken.
That's a line I remember pretty exactly. Okay, go on.
Abraham was 99 years old when he was circumcised on the flesh of his foreskin. And his son Ishmael was 13 years old when he was circumcised on the flesh of his foreskin. On that very day was Abraham circumcised with Ishmael his son, and all the people of his household born in his household and purchased for money from a stranger were circumcised with him.
Okay, so go on.
Ishmael was 13. That's why in the Muslim world,
That's why the Muslim will do 13. Yes.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Because Ishmael's-
Ishmael is the Muslim.
Yeah.
So now let's see what happens. Okay. Abraham has now just circumcised himself with a dull rock. How? Exactly. I got faith, but I'm thinking that may.
That is.
What do they say of those
That's real.
rocks?
I don't see the double.
That's hilarious.
Oh.
I don't care how sharp the rock is, Alan. It's not sharp enough.
I knew it was a rock.
And what happens right after he gets circumcised? He's now sitting outside his tent, recovering.
Yeah.
Right? He's going to sit outside his tent, trying to recover. And what happens? Please continue reading.
Sorry, where am I?
18:1.
Is this Hashem appeared to him in the plains of Mamre? While he was sitting at the entrance of the tent in the heat of the day.
Why is he sitting at the entrance of his tent in the heat of the day? His pee hurts. He just got circumcised. So he's sitting there resting. And now let's see what happens. Go on.
He lifted his eyes and saw, and behold, 3 men were standing over him. He perceived. So he ran toward them from the entrance of the tent and bowed toward the ground. And
So 3 strangers show up. This guy has just had a circumcision as an adult. There's no local anesthesia for this.
No.
And even if there was, it doesn't last forever. He sees 3 strangers and he immediately jumps up to the Go on, please. Keep reading.
where am I? Hold on 1 second. And he said, "My Lord, if I find favor in your eyes, please pass not away from your servant."
So even in his pain, his bigger consideration is not himself, but hospitality to the stranger. Primary value in Judaism.
Yeah. Very true.
Okay? We invite people over to Shabbos dinner. Right? Hospitality is so important. Let's see how important it is. Keep going.
Let some water be brought and wash your feet and recline beneath the tree. I will fetch a morsel of bread that you may sustain yourselves, then go on. Inasmuch as you have passed your servant's way, they say, do so just as you have.
So let's fast forward. He becomes hospitable. And then they reveal themselves that they're angels. They say, where's Sarah? And they say, Sarah is going to have a child. Okay, what does Sarah do? She laughs.
Yeah.
And the word of laughter, the root of being tzachak, being laughter, will end up making, when she does have a child, the child will be named Yitzchak.
Oh.
You didn't know that?
No.
What?
No, I thought it was
Yitzchak,
from,
that's-
wasn't it from his laughter? Not
It's
hers?
from both their laughters. But if you read it, first she laughs and then he laughs. First he laughs. They both laugh.
Didn't he laugh?
We look at page number 10. Sarah's listening at the exam, and Sarah laughed. That's verse 13. Verse 12, excuse me.
But didn't he
And
laugh?
Hashem said to Avraham, why is it that Sarah laughed, saying, shall I in truth bear a child though I have age? She laughs. He laughs too at some point.
Yeah, didn't he laugh at first when he was told that they would have a child together?
But he or she laughs.
She was 90 or 99? She was 90.
She's
He was
90, I think. I once saw a beautiful sculpture. It was a sculpture of Sarah suckling Isaac.
So here is the thing.
And it was this old 90-year-old woman with saggy breasts and thin. Okay, wait, we gotta go away. We gotta stay together. Otherwise, okay, and suckling. So let's keep going. So they say they're gonna have a child, and now we have this issue. If we go down to 1820, okay, please tell me what happens here. This is the story of Sodom and Gomorrah.
Can I ask a question?
Yes,
before we get
please.
there? So why does he circumcise his slaves and everybody else in the household? I mean, I don't understand.
They're part of the community. They're part of the
So it's the whole community that
his whole
participates.
family.
So do they all become Jewish? So it's not,
I actually don't know if I would say they all become Jewish, but they all become part of the family.
and are they, I mean, because then you have this descendant line. It always felt like there was just that line until you got to the 12 and then it.
When you, yeah, but remember.
But here there's all these other people.
Right, and this remember, the
engaged.
12 do marry other people.
Right, they have to. Because they're all guys. now.
And isn't the 8th day significant because it's
All right,
like,
so look, guys, let's see all together. Go ahead. Taylor, ask them about it.
isn't the 8th day significant because of like biologically, it's like when
So
somebody's
why,
born-
that's a different question. The question of why do we do the grief on the 8th day? They have gone through, the child has gone through a full cycle in this world. So we do this as soon as we can after. What is the, now by the way, the Greek law, circumcision is more important than any holiday, and you're going to have a feast as well. If the 8th day is on Yom Kippur, do you do it? Do you not do it?
Do it.
Who says do it? Who says not do it? You do it.
You do it?
The primary commandment of Judaism is the Greek law. And you do it now. If the child is not well, do you do it or not do
No,
it?
you
No.
don't.
And if you don't do it on the 8th day, do you have to do it on the 9th day? No.
30.
You do it after, if you don't make it on the 8th day, you do it whenever it works. Okay. Our boys, because of when they were babies, you know, the twins, they were a little small. We actually did, I think they were each about 3-4 weeks old.
What about Shabbat though? I thought is that just because they won't travel on
It
Shabbat?
trumps Shabbat.
Okay. So it's just that the guy won't travel,
I make no comments about noise, other than the fact there's only 2 that I recommend in the city.
but.
Otherwise, I make no comments about noise. Okay, all right. So what happens? They want to go to Sodom, and the angels say we're going to go destroy Sodom. And Avraham, remember his name is now Avraham, wants to stop them. Okay, so he argues with God. Okay, so please read 18:22. Who wants to read loudly? Come on, 18:22. Somebody.
Do you have it?
And then went on from there to Sodom, while Abraham remained standing before the Lord.
So God's standing in front of Hashem. Go on.
And
18:22.
the word is said, will you sweep away the innocent along with the guilty? What if there should be 50 innocent within the city? Will you then wipe out the place and not forgive it for the sake of the innocent 50 who are in it?
Okay. So what is Abraham doing? One of the qualities of Abraham is he argues with God for what is right. Right? So you're gonna kill all of them. Forget there's 50. Go on, please continue.
Far be it from you to do such a thing, to bring death upon the innocent as well as the guilty. So the innocent and the guilty fare alike. Far be it from you. Shall not the judge of all the earth deal justly? And the Lord answered, if I find within the city of Sodom 50 innocent, I will forgive the whole place for their sin.
All right, so he's negotiated it down to 50. Go on, Alan, keep going.
Abraham spoke, saying, here I venture to speak to my Lord. I am but dust and ashes. What if the 50 innocent should lack 5?
Okay, so he gets him down to 45. Fast forward.
Will you destroy the whole city for one of 5? And he answered, I will not destroy if I find 45 there.
Go on.
Looked to him again and said,
Uh-oh.
what if 40 should be found there? And he answered, I will not do it for the sake of 40.
Go on.
And he said, let not my Lord be angry if I go on. What if 30 should be found there? And he
It's like a
answered,
backwards auction. Go on.
I will not do it if I can find 30 there. And he said, I venture again to speak to my Lord. What if 20 should be found there? He answered, I will not destroy for the sake of 20. And he said, let not my Lord be angry if I speak but this last time. What if 10 should be found there? And he answered, I will not destroy for the sake of 10.
And then go on. Then what happens?
When the Lord had finished speaking to Abram, he departed.
Okay. So Abraham, the Lord God walks away at that point.
I
Now think about this for a minute. Who is Abraham? God, you have questions.
No, I don't.
So Abraham is willing to fight for what is right, even unto God. Right? He wrestles with God. This will become personified 2 generations later when our name becomes Israel, he who wrestles with God. He's already starting. Our relationship with God is never God says we do. It's a wrestling. It's a dance. Remember, wrestling is a very intimate sport. If there were some men wrestling outside that window and you didn't know they were wrestling, you might think they were doing something else. Right? It's very, especially those little Greco-Roman outfits. You might think anything. Right? It's very intimate. It's not a distant sport. It's intimate. We are intimate in dialogue with God. We learn from Avraham. Avraham personifies being willing to laugh, being willing to fight, being willing to step up to God and say, you taught me this is right, now you're going to go against yourself. And we do that a lot, by the way. Moses does this a lot too. But we do that a lot. There's this great song, we'll learn this piece of Talmud where the rabbis are arguing and they ask for God's opinion and God gives an opinion and the rabbis say, God, stay out of it. Lo bashamayim. They say, God, stay out of it. And then God's actually happy. He says, my children defeat me. They use my own rules to beat me up. Okay? So God, he said, remember this quality of Abraham. He argues with God for God what is right. Okay? It's an important quality to remember tonight. And all right, go on. So now they go to Sodom. Why is God destroying Sodom? Tell me what you guys have heard. Be honest. What? What's sin? English.
Sodomy.
Say the word comes.
Sodomy, yeah, right.
What is sodomy? What does it mean to sodomize?
Gay sex.
Sex.
How many of you have heard that? Let's actually read what the sin of Sodom was. Let's read what it actually is. Okay? Because that's not what it is. That's what's so interesting. All right, so they go to Sodom.
And then what's Gomorrah?
Gomorrah is just the side of the next city. It's the additional. Gomorrah actually means additional.
Oh,
So
does
so
it?
Sodom
So
and
it's like
Gomorrah.
a colony.
Yeah, it's sister city. All right. Yeah, Gomorrah means the additional. Gomorrah.
The suburbs.
Gomorrah is the same root. Same root. Same Gimel and Resh. Same short. Okay, so what happens? They go to Sodom. Why is Abraham getting a kid again? What did he do?
He made the covenant.
No, what did he do right before the covenant?
It was the covenant.
No, what did he do?
Oh, the hospitality.
They're rewarded for their hospitality, right? Okay, now could we please turn to chapter 19, verse 1. Who would like to read? Or actually, let me go on. They got, well, go ahead. We'll do it for you. Someone who wants to read quickly. 19:1.
The 2 angels arrived in Sodom in the evening as Lot was sitting in the gate of Sodom. When Lot saw them, he rose to greet them, and bowing low with his face to the ground, he said, please, my lords, turn aside to your servant's house to spend the night and bathe your feet. Then you may be on your way early. But they said, no, we will spend the night in the square. But he urged them strongly, so they turned his way and entered his house. He prepared a feast for them and baked unleavened bread, and they ate. They had not yet laid down when the townspeople, the men of Sodom, young and old, all the people to the last man gathered about the house. And they shouted to Lot and said to him, "Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us that we may be intimate with them." So Lot went out to them to the entrance, shut the door behind him, and said, "I beg you, my friends, do not commit such a wrong. Look, I have 2 daughters who have not known a man. Let me bring them out to you, and you may do to them as you please, but do not do anything to these men, since they have come under the shelter of my roof." But
Okay,
they,
so he actually offers the Sodomites
his daughter.
2 virgins. Okay, so it's 1/35 of supposed to heaven, right? So go on. Go on.
But they said, "Stand back. The fellow," they said, "came here as an alien, and already he acts the ruler. Now we will deal worse with you than with them." And they pressed hard against the person of Lot and moved forward to break the door. But the men stretched out their hands and pulled Lot into the house with them and shut the door. And the people who were at the entrance of the house, young and old, they struck
So
with
stop
blinding
this.
light.
What was the real sin of the Sodomites? They didn't want sex. The opposite of hospitality. They wanted to take advantage of them in whatever way.
Yeah.
So the sin of Sodom is not the sexual act. The sin of Sodom is how you treat the stranger. And the blessing of Avraham is how he treats the stranger. Everyone with me on that?
Yeah, but I mean, there's also like monsters out there. So like, just be like wary with strangers. Like, I mean, show hospitality, but where's the line?
Yeah, you don't invite it. Yes, you're correct. But the issue is that you don't have to ever be inhospitable. They just say, "No, you're not coming to my home."
Well, but what does this "be intimate with them" mean then?
Bada bing, bada boom.
Right, so
But they never
Isn't it-
actually, the act
they don't
never
actually do
occurs.
it, they just want to do it.
They want to do it with a stranger, not even with a virgin.
So that's,
And a supposedly masculine stranger.
The female version, you could, yeah.
so
So
I,
we're not getting into biology here. Go ahead.
I didn't get the exact answer about why he did what he did why did he want to destroy Sodom.
The Sodomites are not hospitable.
Right.
But then this the aspect of sodomy.
With the sex?
Yes, is it not as well?
But if it was only about sex,
No, I'm not
you take the
saying-
virgin girl. Why would you take the old guy? But how you look at it, whichever side you like it from,
Yeah.
you'd still rather be with the young girl than you would with the old guy who's been walking through the desert.
Unless
No, think about it. Okay, we're not going to go into too much detail here, but
Right,
think,
understood.
okay. Now, so it's hospitality. And now let's remember what Avraham does. Now, what's going to happen? We get to. Oh, they're coming back. Go. Everybody, English,
She
everybody.
said, but she learned it because
But
of
we learned that
homosexuality.
the maybe hospitality as well. I've heard that, but also because of Master Dom, Sodom.
Anal sex.
Yes.
Anal sex. There's a whole. When we get to the discussion in Vayikra in Leviticus, about you shall not live with a man the way you live with a woman, which is the line that is used in Torah that is used to condemn homosexuality. We're going to talk when we get to it about different interpretations. And there are a lot of interpretations. And we need to look at the different interpretations. So if you want to interpret it as because of anal sex, that's fine. But it's clearly because of hospitality.
No, I don't want to interpret it. That's what I've learned.
Yeah, you don't have to. You don't have to. And we're going to get to, when we get to the sexual, we'll get to that. I want to get to the part tonight of the Akedah. The Akedah is what we read on Rosh Hashanah. Typically, it's read on the second day. Many temples, because they don't do a second day, they read on the first day. Okay. So what ends up happening? Let's move forward. Okay. Let's move forward. On chapter 21, God remembers Sarah. Sarah conceives a son. Isaac is born. And then Hagar sees, or Sarah sees the son of Hagar. It says mocking that Sarah has jealousy issues. Now the dialogue, there's different midrashic commentaries. One is that there's even one commentary that says Ishmael was sexually abusing Isaac. There's actually a commentary on that. but that's an oral commentary. There's a commentary that they were talking about who loves God more. And Ishmael is saying, I do. You got circumcised when you were 8 days old. I got circumcised when I was 13 years old. And Isaac says, if God asked, I would give him my life. So later on, when he's asked,
He's willing
Yeah.
to do so.
Yeah.
he doesn't. Okay. But whatever it is, the real key here is Sarah is upset with Hagar. Okay? Please read the line, chapter 21, verse 9. Who wants to read 21:9? Someone louder. 21:9.
I will. Sarah saw the son whom Hagar the Egyptian had borne to Abraham plain. She said to Abraham, cast out that slave woman and her son, for the son of that slave shall not share in the inheritance with my son Isaac.
Okay, now, so she says, let's remember what's going on here. Now she's got her own son. And she says to Abraham, hey, you know what? You throw her and her son out, because otherwise her son is going to have some of my inheritance. That's not okay.
Not very hospitable.
I got a better one for you. Totally a fabrication, a fallacious comment. Because who inherits? The son of the mistress or the son of the wife? The son of the wife, right?
Well, it depends.
Son of the wife.
On the mistress only if there is no son.
If there's no son of wife. If there's a son of wife,
Right.
who inherits? Isaac. So what's really going?
Still worried the threat, or maybe
What's really going on here?
Jealousy.
Okay, it's jealous. Let's be honest. It's Sarah's idea to get Hagar, and now she's jealous.
Why was Abraham giving attention to God?
Of course, he loves his son, and he probably loves him. There's a midrash that says when after Sarah dies, Abraham goes to the east and comes back, and he has a wife whose name is Keturah, which means the spicy one. And Keturah is actually Hagar.
maybe.
He wrote them back.
She converts to Judaism and brings her. She's the mother of his child. Compassion, man, still has got some feelings for her, right? And he loves his son. Why wouldn't he love his son? It's his son. Ishmael is his son. So what is this distresses Abraham greatly? So he goes and he asks Abraham, or goes and he asks God, God, what should I do? And God says, whatever she tells you.
Is that a test?
We're always being tested.
Yeah.
Welcome to life.
We're always being tested. That's right. So let's look for a moment. What should Abraham have said to Sarah when she said, throw out Hagar and Ishmael?
No.
She said, no, I'm not throwing them out. My son Isaac's going to get the inheritance. I'm not throwing them out, right? That's the righteous thing.
Right.
Okay? This is a guy who fights with God for what is right. But now that his wife tells him to do something, he takes his cojones, he tucks them underneath, and he goes throw them away. Right? That's what he does, isn't it?
Yeah.
So what should he have said?
No.
Absolutely not.
He is my son.
That's what.
So, what does he say? What should I do? God says, hey, do whatever you
That's the weird thing.
Now he's got God's
Way you
blessing to
worded
do
it.
the wrong thing, right?
Because how often do we give our children some rope? To see, hopefully not a hang, but to hopefully, learn a lesson.
Get a rope burn?
Yeah, exactly it. To grow, all right? And so Ishmael and Hagar are sent out. Okay. And they're cast out. And if you look on verse, I'm going to read just a little bit, 21:17. So Hagar has now, she doesn't want to see this death of a child. The child's crying. She sits down in a distance. She weeps. God hears the cry of the youth. Says, what troubles you, fear not, for God has healed the cry of the youth in his present state. There's a commentary that says, Midrash again, that says, the angels said to God, why are you saving Ishmael? His descendants will abuse your chosen people, descendants of Isaac. God says, I judge someone in their present state, not for what may happen. That's the Midrash. Okay. So it says here.
No, I get what you're saying, but God, the Almighty, the Infinite, that's,
Who sees everything and knows
yeah,
everything.
I just, that,
For whom
that-
time is nothing. Does not judge us based on what we will do or we have to do.
But judge the you of now as the
So
you of now.
because
not
of
the you
that,
tomorrow.
so, okay, but
So the baby is crying. It's a good baby. It's not a good child, it's not a baby, but the child is crying. And so God says, I will save the child, the youth.
regardless of the misery it's gonna bring. to
I will.
the
Because
chosen
there's
people.
still free will and that could change, but I will save the child. The angels are very upset
But
about
in
it.
the future, many more children will die as a result.
And maybe a choice could have made this.
So
Now we start getting to the omniscient God. Thinking, yeah, go on, quickly, I want to get back to that.
yeah, I'm just confused by the fact that, but for the hospitality, Isaac wouldn't have been the chosen. I mean, isn't that what it says? Because they were already covenant. The covenant wasn't when Isaac's born, the covenant's before that, and then comes the hospitality, and then comes the son.
Right.
So how are we the chosen people descended from Isaac? Right? I mean, is
No,
that
we have a
just
covenant.
because of the
The land is given to us and his offspring will be countless.
right? But the offspring is also Ishmael. So
Go on. Finish the sentence.
yeah. So why isn't he the Jewish? Well, and why isn't he
No. Finish the sentence.
Gosh, I don't.
The covenant is made with Avraham for his descendants.
Descendants, right? What?
Therefore, one can certainly make the dialogue that there's a land for the cousins to be together on.
But they have,
If the cousins
May-
were
may-
so
may-
crazy.
but they
If the
have.
cousins weren't so crazy.
Yeah.
No, but it's not just that, but don't they have the land from, the borders of the
All around.
provinces all around.
Yeah, the provinces doesn't
Iraq
include
and
just Israel, it
Iran
includes
and all of that.
And
So
what part
they
of Saudi
have
Arabia
it.
and Syria and different places.
Right, no,
have it.
yeah, but here, I mean, it's really Ishmael's. It's lost because of the hospitality, his birthright or whatever. His right.
No, he never has the birthright.
Well, not the birthright,
He
but
never gets the birthright.
if he's the only son, and there's
But
not
that was
the
never
other-
gonna be.
Okay.
The promise was made to Abraham and Sarah before that.
before the hospitality.
The promise was made. It's
The
just what
hospitality was
starts.
specifically why Sarah was blessed
At that
with
moment.
her fertility at that.
All right, now let's go on. What happens in the Akedah? So God saves
There's
it.
a-
Now let's go to what happens. Chapter 22. The Akedah. It is called the Akedah, meaning the binding. Is it the Akedah of Abraham or the Akedah of Isaac?
Isaac.
It's really Isaac's story, isn't it? Not Abraham. But let's look at this Akedah for a minute.
What's an
What
Akedah?
Akedah means abiding. We read
it's
it on
the
Rosh Hashanah. Someone please read chapter. So this is right after. This is right after the whole issue where Abraham threw Hagar and Ishmael. Now I have a question. Who here has ever been a teacher? Okay. Why do you give tests? Why do you give tests to a class, to students?
That's their knowledge.
Just the knowledge. Okay? And for them to realize where they are, and for you to realize where they are. If you know their knowledge, if you know that they know something, do you need to test them?
No.
Okay? So you don't give a fifth grader, assuming they're up to speed, right? 2 + 2 =. Because you know the fifth grader knows the information. Right? You don't give a college kid 5 × 5 = what? Right? Or a math major at Caltech.
You could just screw with them.
But other than
These
that,
days it might be.
so my kids have started studying with quadratic equations. They're asking for my help. And the last time I did quadratic equations was over 43 years ago or something. I do not remember them. And I remember not liking them when I did know this. Okay. All right. So
Khan Academy.
why do you test? Because you're not sure what they know or don't know, right? Because if you know they know it, you don't test them. If you know they don't know it, you don't test them. True?
Right.
Someone please, here, tell you haven't read that? 22:1, called the Akedah. Let's read exactly what happened. Say it very slowly.
And it happened after these things.
After what things?
Sending Hagar and all that.
Nothing. So that,
Just said it was worded a little differently here.
this is more, this is, our school's always a better translation than it. What I also like about the our schools has the Hebrew knowledge of this. Okay, so After these things, what things?
Yeah.
Throwing Hagar and Ishmael out.
Yeah.
Because him throwing Hagar and Ishmael out really changes what we know about Abraham, doesn't it? Prior to that, Abraham is a man who will fight for what is right, even unto God. Now with this, we don't know if Abraham's still that guy or not, do we?
So that's why we need the Akedah.
Go on, you have a question, go on.
Maybe we don't need the
Is it
Akedah, maybe
important
he needs.
to
He needs
talk
the
about
Akedah.
the marriage, like that it's important to
Help me. Marriage is important to fill in the blank to go a lot of places. Help me out here.
Okay, so I'll tell you what, because one of the things that I've learned from Rabbi Heller in Israel is that marriage is so important in Judaism that the husband and the wife come before the children. That's the right way. And most people don't do that. Well, I'm just relaying the message. So if I
Elu
say,
ve'elu. You know the phrase elu ve'elu?
no,
Elu ve'elu means these words and these words are both the words of living Torah.
okay.
Two Jews equals 3 opinions, 4 rabbis, and 5
okay.
temples. Okay, come on.
So based on that interpretation, Abraham didn't do anything wrong because he listened to his wife to preserve his marriage.
Maybe he didn't. He didn't have a discussion with her either. He didn't even try and convince her differently.
No.
But it says here what it says. After these things, God tested Abraham. What happens right before is this whole issue of Hagar and Ishmael. The text says what the text says.
Are you still the man with whom I
No,
had
he's
covenant?
right. You need to be
Say it loudly.
tested. There
Are
is
you
no
still the
more.
man with whom I had covenant?
Are you so say it loud, yes, because there's a
Are you still the man with whom I had covenant?
same kind of guy. Okay? I need to know where you stand.
We need to know too.
All right.
Yeah.
So after these things,
Yeah.
God tested Abram. Go on, Taylor.
Yes, and said to him, Abraham, and he replied, Here I am.
Okay.
And
This
then
wait.
he means
This happens over and over.
Hidden.
God says to Abraham, he says it once, and Abraham replies, Hineni, here I am. Remember this. This is important. Remember, God says to Abraham, Abraham. He only has to say it once, and Abraham says, Here I am. Okay. Now, go on.
And he said, Please take your son, your only one, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the land of Moriah. Bring him up there as an offering upon one of the mountains, which I shall tell you.
I love it.
Hold on a second. Why? So why doesn't he just, there's not a word in the wrong place. So why doesn't God just say, take Isaac and go take him to a place I'm going to show you where you're going to sacrifice him? Okay? He doesn't, does he?
It's much more specific about it.
Where?
He said, I learned something like that. He said, קח את בנך, take your son. So Abraham said, I have 2 sons. תקח את יחידך, your only son from each mother. And
That's
then
the nice
אשר אהבת,
That's the nice interpretation.
This one says favorite.
I love you both.
Yeah.
Okay? This is the nice interpretation that explains it nicely.
Yes.
The other interpretation, and remember there's a lot of different interpretations, okay? There's the interpretation that Abraham succeeds in this whole idea. We maybe study something different. Then what if he's saying this, not just, that's a nice way to say, well, Abraham's saying this. He just got rid of one of them, so he doesn't have
Had one son.
There's one son this way.
This one
So what if he's saying this in sarcasm? Hey, Abraham, here I am now. Kachna et bincha, take your son. You didn't think Ishmael was your son, did you, you Shmedrick? Your only son. Because clearly you didn't like the other one, the one you love. Because clearly you treated the other one like Bookus, you didn't love him, Isaac.
Opposite.
It's sarcasm.
But I don't think it's a good
But
translation.
Hold on. Let's go through the whole Akedah. Come back to your buddy.
Yeah, then it says-
Yes, come on, let's see it.
Okay, couldn't this also be that Isaac was his legitimate son?
Sure.
Hmm.
There's a lot of interpretations. Okay, understand the interpretation of Akedah. We all know the story that ends up happening, right? He goes up to the mountaintop. He almost kills Isaac. He's stopped, right? But he's bringing his son. That's interpreted by the church as a preface for God giving Jesus to the people as a sacrifice. That's how the Catholic Church and Christian Church interpret that.
That's right.
Okay, they use this story
Hmm.
and say that this is the preface to what God will later do, which is, hold on. So I want to get through this.
Okay.
Okay?
I'll wait.
So now what does God do? Or what does Abraham do?
Abraham woke up in the morning and he said,
No, he didn't wake up in the morning. What's it say?
So Abraham woke up early.
What's it say in the Hebrew? Can someone please read?
וישכם אברהם בבוקר.
So he gets up early. This isn't getting up. Okay, go on. And what does he do?
ויחבוש את
No, you go
חברו.
ahead.
Why you read English?
And he saddled his donkey. He took his 2 young men with him and Isaac, his son. He split the wood for the offering and stood up and went to the place of which God had spoken.
He sneaks out before Sarah wakes up.
Yeah.
Ah,
He takes his
he
son.
doesn't just,
Takes his son.
He
This is-
sneaks out.
Okay, we're gonna give one interpretation and a whole other interpretation. I want to give more than one interpretation. Hold on. Okay, so I'm gonna go quickly through the story. What ends up happening? He sneaks out early in the morning. Language that is repeated when we have the story of Balaam and Balak. by the way. And he gets up there, and Isaac allows him to be tied up. Isaac is a 41-year-old man at this point.
Right.
There's somewhere 37 to 41.
He's an adult.
And he's an adult, strong man. And this is an altar cocker. Remember we learned about AKs? He's an altar cocker. And he's letting his father bind him.
Now he's over 100 something.
Yeah. 130 something, 40 something, whatever. He's a really old guy, right? And he's binding Isaac, right? Isaac allows himself to be bound. Then what happens is so important. Someone please read verse 11, chapter 22. Go on, Taylor. Keep reading. Keep reading. You're going to go through that.
11.
22:11.
And an angel of Hashem.
Yep, go on.
And an angel of Hashem called him from heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham. And he said,
Stop.
Here.
Go on, go to the next line.
And he's Hineni.
What's different? Come on, roll
Called him
around.
twice.
Called him twice.
He was so hidden. He had so concealed himself. He had so stepped away from who he
Even God
really
cannot
is
find him with ease.
that he now has to hear it twice
Wow.
before he gets stopped.
He also is obsessed.
We've seen him Balaam and Balak. He's just focused. I got to do this every day. When he should have just said no in the first place. But now that he gave over his cojones with Sarah, when God says sacrifice your son, what should he have said to God?
No.
Up yours.
Right? He already argued for 50 people he didn't know. He argued for the whole town of Sodom. He fucked with God.
Yeah.
But for his own son, his only son, as far as he knows, that's left because the other one's dead, he says, well, so one interpretation of the Akedah is it is not Abraham's success story, it is Abraham's failure.
So you wanted him to say no, absolutely not?
Don't we see that in Sodom? God likes it when Abraham argues for us, right?
So by him saying yes,
He's failed.
he's fine.
And he
Failed the test.
Now, let's just see. We fails. Now, let's look at.
No, but it's also a lesson
Wait,
about Muna.
Wait. So we've heard the interpretation. He succeeded. He had faith in God. God gave him another son or whatever. But the reality is, if you're going to make an argument, right, in whatever we do in Torah, we got to back up the argument. So if I want to say it's emunah, it's faith. Okay? Abraham has such faith in God, he talks to God about everything. We've all heard this interpretation. He talked with God about it, and God said, go for it. He does exactly what God tells him. Right? We've all heard that interpretation, right? Nachon? We've all heard this interpretation. But there's a whole other interpretation. He failed.
Mhm.
First of all,
And
now
it's better.
I better be able to back it up. How do I back it up? Here's how I can back that argument up. It's not my argument. But here's how you back it up. First of all, when it says after these things, he needed to test Abraham. He only needed to test Abraham because Abraham wasn't acting like he used to. What were these things? Obviously, the things right before, which were Hagar and Ishmael's expulsion. Moreover, Abraham now says he doesn't hear God as well. He has to hear Hineni twice. Moreover, after this drama, God never talks to Abraham in the Torah again.
Right.
Really?
He never talks to Abraham again.
This is the last time he
It's the
talks.
last time.
Wow.
Wow.
Okay. Moreover, wait, I'm not done with my proof text. Okay. I'm running for SCOTUS. Yeah. My competitors with the candidates I got. So
Abraham for not arguing with him?
it's not that he's punishing. He's realized Abraham wasn't the guy that he needs to do this now. He's lost. Wait, it gets more, but it gets more.
He's weak.
First of all, let's look what happens
He's
as a
also
result of
old,
this.
though.
Yeah.
Wait, but let's look what happens about after this. God never talks to Abraham again. Isaac goes blind. How do we know Isaac goes blind? Because Isaac, when Jacob and Esau
Right.
can't tell the difference. And so there's a Midrashic commentary that Isaac goes blind in that moment from trauma blindness, from seeing his father about to kill him and angels screaming at his father. He gets trauma blindness and he goes blind. Moreover, if we look at the very next portion, as soon as the story of the Akedah is over, Sarah, chapter 23, it's Sarah dies. And the Midrash is Sarah wakes up in the morning. She, with a mother's foresight, she sees her husband's about to kill her son. She has a heart attack and crosses.
Of course, what the mother won't die.
So Abraham Michel.
Fashla, mamash.
Abraham
Fashla is like school.
For stones.
Messed up.
Okay? So, one interpretation is Abraham did it his faith. He had total faith in everything, and that's what God wants, is blind faith. That is the interpretation that is the most prevalent interpretation, partially because of Christianity. It's a great deal is because of Christianity, because it's the idea of faith, blind faith.
God is perfect, believe in perfect God.
Do what you're told.
Right.
And the priest is the vehicle between you and God. Right? On the other hand, there's a whole other interpretation, just as justifiable, isn't it? That says Abraham was tested because he blew it when it came to Hagar and Ishmael. And so God tested him to see where he really was. He was tested and he failed. And as a result of his failure, God doesn't talk to him. His wife dies and his son goes blind.
But that's a very uncommunicative God.
No, it's not.
No, it's not.
Mama.
God's been talking
Even if
about-
he wants to stop talking to him, at least he can have closure, say to him, no, I really mean it.
Well,
If
we can
you're
also
talking
argue
about
that
God, we are humanizing God, then.
We're not humanizing God.
Not humanizing
Okay,
God.
disappearing like that as an act of disappearance without any warning, without any
He
explanation.
gets plenty of warning.
It sounds to me like a revenge for.
No.
There's no vengeance.
No.
I
God,
don't know, that's what I was thinking.
God's been talking
Well,
Now,
about.
wait a minute. Now,
Like
here's
other man.
here's the important phrase in all of this.
failed the test.
Here's the great phrase.
Yes.
Elu ve'elu. It means these words and these words are both the words of the living God. There is not an interpretation. Judaism is not monolithic.
Yeah.
I can make an argument that Abraham was faithful, and that's what this is about. And I can argue that as hard as I need to. And I can make an argument that Abraham failed this test. And I can make this as much as I need to. And I can make an argument that this wasn't even about Abraham. It's all about Isaac.
You can also make an argument that because he was
You see the point? So it's Elu ve'elu. Judaism is not, that's what's one of the real important lessons in this. Judaism's not monolithic. When any Jewish leader says, this is the Jewish way, you tell them they're full of basura. Because there is no the Jewish way.
there is a Jewish way, but that's only one of them.
Correct. And elu ve'elu, these words and these words are both. So you're not wrong.
No, I get that, but then you're opening you're opening a path to start arguing. So like mitzvot, certain mitzvot that we are told to do. So are there is room for interpretation? And feeling. So I can do it in different ways, or Latum Yom Kippur, fasting on Yom Kippur. So I
So
mean,
you've seen
where is
it
the
like
end?
that.
No.
Okay, so let's
where
do
is
that.
the end?
So the answer is, it says in Parsha Shoftim, in the book of Deuteronomy, we will get to it when we get to it, that you go to the judge or the Rav of your time and community. Duty says left or right, east or west. Actually comments. If the rabbi says this is west, it's now west. If he says it's east, it's now east.
That's defeating everything else.
No, it's not.
But
here's why it's not.
No, but there are also, I hear what you're saying, I've heard it before, but there are certain axiomos, like certain things that.
Like you gotta fast on Yom Kippur?
Huh?
You gotta fast on Yom Kippur.
That it says in the Torah.
Okay?
I'm just using it as an example.
That's a great example. Who says you have to fast on Yom Kippur?
You don't if you're sick or for this or.
What are the exceptions?
There's exceptions.
Only, is that the only exception?
I don't know.
If you're
Okay.
But
More-
everyone agrees on that. It's
No,
not-
but it says that you go to the shofet of your time and place. So I'm gonna give you an
The
example. I want you,
shofet of the time of day.
I want you to come sit right here.
Uh,
Lachim.
ציווי.
לך, yeah.
Okay.
לך, לכולם.
In our little circle right now, I got lost where I am. This is north or west? This is north. Okay, you're facing me. You're in the north, I'm in the south. Okay? Right?
The north is.
Well, it says actually, I have to go look at the north.
That's right.
Okay, is this, okay. That's north right now, okay? We're just gonna say that's north, okay? All right, so you are, in our relationship, you are north, correct? Don't move. You're now in the south, and you didn't even do anything.
North to south.
You didn't do anything, and you moved the opposite direction. How'd you do that?
Magic.
The circumstances around me moved.
Get up, okay, you can go back up. Which means it's about relationship. Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, I believe it was, said to a group of rabbinic students, chief rabbi of this nation, early 20th century, said to a group of rabbinic students, when a woman comes to you and she asks if the chicken is kosher, look at the woman before the chicken. Because if she can't afford another chicken, you better know the halacha well enough to make that chicken kosher.
Huh.
Halacha comes from the word lalechet, to go. It does not mean dictum. It means going. The law is to serve the people, not the people the law. So there is no mitzvah that is not within relationship.
Yes, I agree with that.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. No,
זה
but
הדרך של האורתודוקס, שהם תקועים, והקונסרבטיב, we are living with ההלכה.
The reforms say this, the renewals say this, the reconstruction says this, the Hasidic say this.
זה בדיוק.
But the point is that the Torah accepts many of them. And what I really want everyone to get in this, because this is so important. I was watching it. It's so important. You can interpret this story of Abraham as Abraham's success. You can interpret it as Abraham's failure. You can interpret it as a whole story about what happens and the karma for Sarah's jealousy. Right?
You can also see it as his rise and fall.
You can see this his rise and fall, his journey of the dark night, right, of the dark soul. You can interpret this all as a rite of passage for Isaac to become the leader of the people. You can interpret this in all sorts of ways, can't you? And what's so important is, it's not he's right or he's right.
Everybody's right.
If it's based in Torah, then you're right. You don't want to take it out of Torah because then you start getting some mishagas. But the idea is that if someone says, well, is he right or is he right? The answer is yes.
Yeah.
But isn't that true of every thought or everything anybody does, that you can interpret it in so many ways? I mean, right?
But so we have rules of interpretation based in Torah, and then the oral Torah, which would be the Talmud. And that's where we get our laws from. But we also know that these laws are based in relationship. So the book I wrote was called Sacred Relationships. Because there was a book a number of years ago, God is a Verb. I don't think God is a noun, I don't think God is a verb, I think God is found in a relationship. To see another person, to love another person, is to see the face of God. And so when we look at this story of Abraham and Isaac and this binding of Isaac, we can interpret it all different ways. And I think one of the important things is to realize the validity of each of those interpretations. So if you look at it and say, I cannot relate to that God because I don't buy that interpretation, because I think he just abandoned Abraham by not giving him psychological closure, that is a legitimate interpretation. If Alex says, I cannot relate to the idea of a God who would command a man to kill his son, I think that's sadistic. Alex says, I can't relate to that God. His interpretation is also right. Because we're basing it all in what the text says. That's what's so important. That we all choose to really start looking at it as rabbis. Every one of us. Because when we look at it as rabbis, we start looking, not just saying, oh, this is what it says, this is what it says, okay? But rather, we start to think. We start to think non-rationally, not irrationally, not rationally, but non-rationally. We start to think, curiously, we start to think and examine and observe and tear apart the text, open it up. It's all, see, if you relate as a father, give me first. I cannot relate to a God that would tell a human being to kill his son.
I mean it.
Can't do it.
Yeah.
Can't do it. That's not a God for me. It's sadistic. I don't care what the reason is.
Yeah.
Okay? You may say I can't relate to a God that doesn't give closure to poor little A.B. I got no problem with it.
No, I just brought it up as a.
As part of the machloket.
Yeah.
But what
So-
is the answer to that? How do we relate to a God who can do this? I mean, isn't that the Holocaust and the whole thing?
That's definitely a whole other question.
Right,
How,
yeah.
how can God be all powerful, all knowing?
Right.
All good and so Holocaust.
Or why do we adhere to a God who can do this?
And so this starts getting into the issue of faith.
And so now you're back into the story, back to faith again.
Now do you
So
see why we
where's our
spent
faith in
almost
this?
an hour on this little story? Okay? Because it starts to become recapitulated. One circumstance after another for the last 3,700 years. Okay? There's a whole other interpretation. You know what? Here, I'm going to give you another interpretation. Abraham knew that he wasn't going to sacrifice God. He knew it up front. So this is all play to be played out for Isaac. Here's an interpretation that he knows that Abraham, because okay. Wait. I know it's here somewhere. Chapter 22, verse 4. On the third day, Abraham raised his eyes to the place. On the third day, Abraham raised his eyes and perceived the place from afar. And Abraham said to his young men, remember the two guys who were with him?
Yeah.
Stay here by yourselves with the donkey, while I and the lad will go up yonder. We will worship, and we will return to you.
We will return.
Look at it. Look at the Hebrew. It's verse 5, chapter 22. That's my Buddhist not sure. But you look at it. What does it say?
יפה, ויאמר אברהם אל נעריו, שבו לכם פה עם החמור, ואני והנער נלכה עד כה ונשתחווה ונשובה. And שנינו נחזור.
There's we will.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
you knew from the
Wait. Now, one interpretation is the two guys who are with him are saying, wait, what's going on here? He knows he's going to go murder his son, so he's lying to them. Another interpretation is,
He knows
This is
already.
He's never going to actually let
I'm never going to kill Isaac. This is all play to see if Isaac really has the faith. It's the binding of Isaac, remember? Does Isaac have the faith to let himself almost die?
Sarah have the faith that I won't actually harm our son.
You see the point? Now, I can make that interpretation just as well based on that verse, can't I? I can say he's a lying sack who not only has given up his cojones, but now he's lying to everybody to cover it up. Or I can say he knows perfectly well, and this is all a drama played out for Isaac. Which is right?
Any of them.
A or B?
They're all both right.
Yes.
Hey.
Takes me into why.
That's why Jews make good lawyers.
Or really bad ones.
Intent behind
Yeah,
it.
you're right.
So we're gonna. I was gonna stop at 9. I'm sorry, you guys kept asking questions.
sorry, I was
Okay, so
No, we just have an hour.
hold on, just a couple more questions. Oh yeah.
Quickly, if it was all for Isaac's benefit, what would be the outcome then for Isaac's benefit?
That Isaac is binding himself to God
Okay.
and is totally committed to God. Isaac is is the one who's talked the least about in normative Judaism because he never leaves Israel. He's the one patriarch who never leaves Israel.
Right.
He's also the patriarch that's loved in the Kabbalah and mysticism. He's the great mystic and teacher and meditator.
He
He's the great
represents
Solomon,
another
great
being,
Solomon.
Yes.
which is the harshest one.
Our din is the the foundation of chesed. And we'll get there. We'll get there. All right. So I hope this was good. I hope I'll see you all next week. We're gonna thank you. I hope this was fun. And we have services Friday night. Benny will not be here because it's Danny who's filled in for us. Danny's still here. So Benny will not be here, but we have services on Friday night. So you're just stuck with Benny and me, or with Matt and me.
Are you doing regular services now?
Just you get the emails, right?
Yeah, but I mean, because it was Friday every other week and Saturday.
No, we're starting to do more and more.
Okay.
Now, we're gonna do more after Pesach, too. We're not fully moved in. There's still a lot of work. So it's gonna get more and more, is the idea.
3 Fridays in a row.
Okay, so just check the emails.
Yes, should check the
Okay.
emails. If you
And
want-
take these with you, because this is a good handout.
Yeah, we have.
How do you like the class?
Like all the
Different, right?
names,
It's interesting.
Joaquin, but Torah that we can read. It's amazing.
That's why I put it
Huh?
together.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
I've heard one
You
interpretation.
cannot just watch the videos, you have to come with me.
Finding that
So he
Isaac
said, I want to just watch the
was a
videos.
rejection.
Okay.
But in person,
Yes.
it's different.
It's very different.
Yeah, we literally got 2 hours, an hour
Thank
here,
you.
an hour
Fun?
there.
I know.
No,
Love it.
But it is, it's better.
If I don't watch it, I can do it at time.
You're gonna watch it. You're coming with me.
That's me, but I'm okay with someone else saying that.
You're right.
But I was never okay with, God saying that. I learned this, whatever, 35 years ago. Right? And it was never, my child, I was never okay that God told me to accept that. I thought that was just terrible and sadistic and cruel. When I learned this, that sung to me.
wow.
Only two,
Right?
absolutely.
But everyone's gotta have what works for them. It's supposed to learn that this and this and this and this. Elu ve'elu.
Rabbi, we're out of town next week, so.
Okay.
We'll watch.
It will be online or.
Yeah, we'll check it out. I just didn't want you to.
Fun?
Thank you.
Yeah, that was great.
Adios.
This was fun.
See you Friday.
Very thank you. Yes, you will.
Thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's,
I know.
and you can tell, you know what, God, I love this.
Me too, and I've been doing the reading, so I did up until.
Yeah.
This is better, she was my
Daughter, not a big
now,
one.
going to be.
Yeah, just read it like
Yeah,
that.
I'll read them, okay, and then we go through, and then we can start having discussions, because I have lots of questions.
And just call me, we can have questions, we can have fun.
Anytime you
That's
All
weird.
right.
So the Christianity.
But she's sick.
Right, with love, this,
Romy.
and Judaism, God equals God.
Who's the name again?
God equals God.
See you next week.
Bye.
Back, opening my water. All right. Wait, someone has to take the tzedakah.
Mommy, advarim
No,
shalom.
Wait, Taylor, come here. Take the money,
Okay, and find someone to give it.
yeah, or a cause, or a charity, not the temple. Give it to something, not that you can leave the box, but empty it out, and it goes.
I want
Fun?
to say bye, thank you.
Was that fun?
If it was a smaller group, I would have asked so many questions.
We got more questions, you can ask as many as you want.
How do I take, how do I
I
take it
just wanted to get the money
out?
out. But isn't
I love it, and I love your interpretation of the story of Abraham. Only for you.
Wow, this is like a thing in and of itself, huh?
Don't ask me. Orlando, do you know how we do this?
No, there's, the big ones don't come out, they're too big.
What they do, they put in a magic
Oh.
coin?
Next week we'll start.
No, it put the dollar ones, so there's
What
too
kind of
big.
shmender did that?
Well, need to find out.
Okay, let me say, let's leave it
If you
till
want,
next week.
whenever you
Next
want.
week. I will leave it.
Or you want, it's not that I'm not.
Should
I
we
don't-
leave
I-
it until?
Yeah, just leave it,
You
don't
have
worry
to-
about
We
it.
don't
It's
have
just,
time. We don't have time.
yeah.
It's an hour to do it. Next week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll take it next week. Thank you.
And it's a big about 9 days. We leave before days off. It's easier, for us, it is easier to lock up the house, close up the house, go out of town,